Hi, it's Jessica here from Fox's Blog Knits. Welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Thank you for joining me today from Mangawhai in Northland, New Zealand, where I live, in a little seaside town with my teenage daughter, my partner, and our rescue pets, Jasper the dog and Primrose the cat. So many things to remember. As always, I include for you any show notes or links to what I've mentioned within this episode, such as patterns or products in the description below. So make sure that you check those out at the end of this video. And if you enjoy this episode, please give it a like and make sure that you check out the rest of my channel for other finished object videos and of course my monthly video podcast. And this is where you can find all of my newsy chat as well as what I'm working on. So today I will be sharing with you a finished object that I finished recently. Well, technically it's two finished objects as they're socks. So, which is the better side? Hang on. This one. So these are the Cyril socks, and they are from designer Danielle George, who goes by the name Little Bobbins. And this was my first time knitting socks, and this designer was actually recommended to me by one of my podcast viewers. So thank you very much, Julie, for the recommendation. Danielle is based in the UK and she has so many pretty sock patterns, and I absolutely loved these socks as soon as I saw them, as well as her Rita socks. And I've actually bought both patterns. I'm just not sure when I will get around to do the Rita socks, but hopefully soon. And both of these I purchased through her Ravelry store. If you've watched my monthly podcast from August, you'll have heard me mention that I don't actually think I'm a sock knitter. I mean, I do like knitting socks, but I don't think that they will become my favourites over jumpers and sweaters anytime soon. As I mentioned, this was my first time knitting socks, and I think it was such a great pattern for a starter sock knitter, if you're confident with the other knitting techniques. So the pattern itself is really, really clearly written and very easy to follow, and I love that Dani has included such a beautiful introduction to the inspiration behind her design. Something that I'd actually really love to see from more designers in the pattern themselves. If you've not seen it, she has a story about two characters that are inspired by the inscription inside of her vintage wedding engagement ring. And I love that she's imagined these two characters and designed patterns based on the inspiration from those. So anyway, I digress. It's really, really gorgeous, and it's even worth just buying the pattern to see all of that kind of thing. So aside from being a pattern recommendation, I really was drawn to this design just by the simple cable detail around the sock, which I really love. It's very, very basic, and for these I chose to make the smallest size on the pattern, which was cast on with 56 stitches. I was worried that these would actually be super small for me as I was knitting, but once they were on, they were okay. The medium one had a cast on of 64 stitches, but I think that somewhere in the middle for me would have been a bit better. I did a very haphazard gauge swatch for these, which I know is really, really naughty. I only did a little bit to get the stitch count right widthways. I figured that it's a sock pattern, you just adjust as you go for the length, so it wasn't too much of a major. And these were knit on a 2.25mm needle. I did wonder if I went up a size to a 2.75, if that would have made a difference and would have hit that nice happy medium for the size for me. But I was reluctant, as I really preferred the way that the smaller stitches looked with the smaller needles. So the yarn for this, which I briefly showed you on the monthly podcast. So the yarn that I used for this was one from New Zealand indie dyer called Kiwi Yarn A, which she is based in Christchurch. And just pausing for a moment for a little bit of trivia. The name is actually a play on words from Kiwiana. So Kiwi Yarn A, Kiwi Yarn A, which is what we call in New Zealand anything that is a little bit Kiwi kitsch. I'm not sure what you can compare it to around the world, anything else. It's a term of endearment basically to things that evoke nostalgia, things that are kind of a little ugly but cute and quintessentially Kiwi, and most Kiwiana is from the mid-century. And this includes things like the famous PowerShell house from Invercargill, which has actually been completely relocated to within a museum to keep safe, commemorative tea towels, spoon collections, or how every kid when they're born in this country seems to have been gifted a buzzy bee, like the one that was gifted to Prince William in 1983. And I'm sure I'm probably painting a very weird visual, but anyway, if you're into finding out more, you can go down a Google rabbit hole. But I do love a pun, and I think that the name is so clever. And I have also just noticed that she has updated her shop actually with a whole bunch of new colours. So make sure that you have a look. I'm definitely eyeing up a few. So this is the sweetest colourway, and it knits up really, really nicely. It's called Lamingtons. If you weren't sure, a lamington is a pastel coloured sponge cake covered in coconut, usually in tones of pink, and if they aren't made of chocolate. So yes, definitely a Kiwi classic. I still have quite a bit of this left here too, so I'll just have to see what I can make with that. It's a 4-ply sock yarn made from 80% merino and 20% nylon, and comes in a 100-gram hank that works out to be around 400 meters. So definitely a generous amount of yarn, and I really love the subtle pastel shades, and it's so soft and smooth and a really beautiful quality yarn that doesn't knot easily. It's nice and smooth, but not in that like smooth slippery kind of way. It's just a really beautiful yarn. I've had quite a few yarns that I've purchased from Kiwi Yarna and I found that they're all really good quality. So anyway, on those leftovers, what do you actually do with your bitty leftovers like this? There's actually probably quite a bit here. I worked it out. I actually have nearly 200 meters, so it's quite a bit. I've been trying to think of some things that I can do. I know that there's scrappy socks and jumpers, but do you have any little projects that you can recommend I use just to gobble up a few grams? That would be great. So at first, these socks were so painfully slow to make, and like I was seriously questioning my abilities. It was that slow, and I think that I was only doing a few centimeters a night, which for me is like sloth speed. It's ridiculous. So I'm so used to sweaters where I can sometimes sit and do 10 to 15 centimeters in a sitting, and sometimes even a whole sleeve, and I honestly thought I'd be making these for months, but when I did get through that first sock, the second one, it only took a few days. So I don't know, maybe it was because I think I was learning new stuff, and when you're learning a new technique or something new, or doing something that you haven't done before, I guess it's bound to take a little bit longer. Also, the first sock is riddled with mistakes, and when I say riddled, there are more mistakes in that first sock than there are successes. I have no idea how that happened, but it did, and the second sock is pretty great, and yeah, when they're on, you can't even tell, and it's only when you look closely, so it's actually quite hilarious when you look close, so don't. There is mainly a discrepancy in the cuff, even though it's the exact same row count and the decreases in the foot. I completely mucked up. The cable across the top of this foot only has 3 and this one has 4, so I don't know. I'm quite a perfectionist, and yeah, I would be quite bothered by it, but I can definitely live with these. I just can't even. So this pattern is knit from the cuff down, which I quite like to start, something that is so easy. And the pattern uses an Eye of Partridge heel flap and gusset construction, which I absolutely loved. I'll see if I can show you a little bit closer. It's got this really pretty little texture there. This is the reject sock, but we'll just pretend you can see that there. Very nice. That little kind of like almost herringbone texture, and the base of the foot was just really tidy. So yeah, it's really delicate and interesting to knit, and it creates that really subtle texture and interest, which is quite nice, and it doesn't actually feel very fat and heavy. I think a lot of handmade socks kind of have that back heel that just is like, so this just feels really nice and it spreads out really beautifully. I'll definitely be reusing this one for future socks. And as this was my first time making socks, it was my first time doing the Kitchener stitch, which was easy enough to kind of get the hang of, and it's really quite magic the way that it just connects everything completely without invisibly. It's invisible. Very clever. It was also my first time using a German twisted cast on, which I also absolutely loved. It was really easy and really rhythmical. Rhythmic? I think I just made up a word. Anyway, it gave a really great stretch to the cuff without it being baggy, and has a really nice finish on them. So I'm yet to block these socks, but I don't think that I will. I've actually just used, I'm having some laser cut sock blockers made for the shop, and I am waiting for them to arrive, and in the meantime I've made a cardboard template so I can show you the sock all stretched out, that isn't as big as the sock blocker on the top, but I really wanted to show them, so I've just fashioned that out of some cardboard. But yeah, hopefully they'll be coming in the shop soon. Anyway, so as I said, I'm yet to block these socks, and I don't actually think that I will. I've already been wearing them. I don't even think you need to block socks. Well, you probably would if there was a lace pattern, but not so much. Not so much for these, I don't think. It's way too much. So what do I think overall? I think that these are a great pattern if you are a confident knitter and are wanting to have a go at making some socks that are pretty and interesting to knit, with something to keep your interest going as you go down the pattern. It's a really well written pattern, and it's just over a couple of pages, so the cable itself I found was quite easy to memorize. Well, kind of, although I did have to keep checking back to the printout to see what way they were with the right and the left. I'm not sure when or if I'll be making another pair with these. Grace has asked me for a pair of exactly these, so I will probably end up making her some, but I really want to try a few more of the little Bobbins patterns, as well as finally getting to the Rita socks. So let me know in the comments if you're planning on making these for yourself, or if you have done so already. And have you tried any of Danielle's other patterns? So as always, my bigger, chatty video podcasts are once a month, and between times I'll be sharing other finished object videos just like these. So make sure that you subscribe to be first in the know when those are posted. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you give it a like and remember to subscribe. So thanks for being with me here again today, and I'll see you again soon for the next episode of Fox's Blog Knits. Happy knitting! Bye!